Today's episode is with Pablo Vidal.
How are we going to be detecting and responding after an event has occurred, and really let them own the program? There are things that we are doing that we're working with support with several teams where they can leverage anybody within the organization can create a security case whenever the most critical incident. These are the steps that you need to take, like focusing on executive summary. Depending on the severity, there could be a lot of things that are at stake. Define who's the incident commander, define the steps. There are so many things that could be manual that need to be automated. Well, people are going to be losing their jobs, but people will be focused on the skills that I'm going to be looking for, since we want a team that is a security engineering team, that things can be messy at times, chaotic, and we embrace that because it gives us what other teams need across the organization and how can detection and response help them out. Like, one of the things that I ask all the people that I interview is, like, what are the things that we're...
Hi everyone, this is Purushottam and thanks for tuning into ScaletoZero podcast. Today's episode is with Pablo Vidal. Pablo is the head of security operations at Rippling, and he covers threat detection, response, cloud, and corporate security at Rippling. He has been focused on kickstarting these functions from ground up, and he's working to create world-class security team that fosters psychological safety, empathy, and a unique enthusiasm for problem solving across the organization. Pablo, welcome to the podcast. For our audience, do you want to briefly share about your journey?
Yeah, I've been at Rippling for 15 or 16 months now, and it's been a pretty wild ride. Just because when I joined, the team was still being formed, and there's been so many things that we've done, both from a foundational and kind of like cross team collaboration perspective, that I get the feeling that now we've somewhat like put ourselves in the map, and we are a team that is referenced in many places within Rippling. So I think that, like, the future is also pretty bright because of all the things that we've been able to achieve so far, and all the visibility that we've had. That, I don't know, I think that it just feels that it's going to be kind of like smooth sailing from now on.
Let's hope so. So there are two things that I really liked about your work. One is like you in your intro, you are not focusing on like tools or security programs and stuff like that. You are rather talking about empathy and building problem solving throughout the organization. And the second thing is fostering the psychological safety amongst the teams. And I believe this is one of the core tenets of Google as well, like where they say that psychological safety is one of the important tenets. If you feel safe, you can contribute better. So I really love that from your work.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. We have a team that has really, really good output, and one of the reasons why of having that output is because they feel strongly about the things that they do, the the people that they work with on a day-to-day basis, and also even selfishly, like their own career, like the things that they are doing, know how those things are contributing to their own personal growth. So
Mhm.
having that environment, I think that it feels unique in a way, but it's really, really
Mhm.
important to be able to have a team that at the end of the day is that you're having a team focused on the long term for both Rippling and for themselves.
Yeah, totally agreed. So a follow-up question sort of to that is, how does a day in your life look like today? Like I ask this question to all of our guests and I get unique answers. So I'm curious, like what does your day look like?
That's a good question, and it depends a lot on the day and what is going on at the end of the day. Because of the detection and response team is obviously a team who has a pretty wild difference between day to day from an operational load perspective. There are security incidents that need to be handled, and that definitely drives the focus. There are weeks that are a bit more quiet where you can focus on strategic planning. There are other weeks that you're basically on tactical mode nonstop, which, to be honest, it's something that I personally like because during
Mhm.
those situations, you're really being put to the test, and I really like how my team reacts on those situations. Those are the highlights in a way to me, because
Mm-hmm.
during security incidents, there are always a lot of situations where there is no process for that, or maybe we are facing a new threat, and how the team is
Exactly.
creative and figure things around on how to contain that incident, mitigate it, and basically work with the rest of the organization to do our best work. It's one of the things that I'm the proudest about. And again, like as I said, like there are up and downs. Obviously, you don't have to be dealing with security incidents because you would be burning the people out. But it's also something that you cannot control. So my day to day depend like varies a lot depending on the things that we are seeing from the organization.
Makes sense. And I can see two benefits out of it also, right? Like when you are hands on and when you are doing the tactical things, you learn, and that again feeds into the strategy, right? Overall, how should you design your security program, incident response, detection and response program? So it helps you in the improvement of the overall security in the organization.
Absolutely. And like that's what we put a lot of emphasis on postmortem exercises at the end of the day. Like even throughout the incident, sometimes that you see on the Slack channels that people are already making notes. Hey, we should take this point into consideration for a postmortem and like things that we need to do better so we don't forget about it. So we discuss it and then think strategically about how are we going to be filling those gaps. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah, that's lovely. So speaking of like tactical and dealing with incidents, today we are going to talk about incident detection and response, and also we'll touch on hiring security teams. What are some of the do's and don'ts of it? So let's get into the incident detection and response. So it is one of the fundamental pillars of cybersecurity, right? And it's important to understand the concept of it, and so that it helps with proactive threat management and incident handling strategies. So to our audience, can you briefly explain the concept of detection and response?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that like one of the since probably your audience is going to be like a from like product security, cloud security, detection and response, it's going to be a mix of all. Uh, think of detection and response just focusing obviously on the detection side of things, like things after things have happened. Uh, Cloud security,
Hmm.
product security are mostly going to be focused on the preventative controls. What can we do to stop something from happening? Detection and response
Hmm.
is going to focus on how are we we're going to be detecting and responding after something, an event has occurred. There is a
Hmm.
lot that can be done to increase our detection coverage, to identify more nefarious, like be better at identifying nefarious activity within your systems, and then focusing on that like containment strategy. What are the things that you can do that you can automate to respond quickly and like just in general better to those events that are at the end of the day going to happen.
So, follow up question to that I'm curious about is, you have been working on detection and response for some time. What excites you about this even today?
That's a really good question. To be honest, I haven't been working on detection and response for that long. My background is on cloud security, and that's one of the reasons what led me to join Rippling. It's the opportunity to uh, basically get familiar and lead the detection and response team. Uh,
Hmm.
and I personally love it. For two reasons, you could tell when I was talking about my day to day, I was focusing more on the
Hmm.
detection and response side because it's the it can be a bit of a roller coaster depending on if we whether we have security incidents or not. But I
Hmm.
really like being able to give it a different spin in a way to the detection and response team. Because sometimes the detection and response teams can be somewhat isolated as a bit of a black box into coming from cloud security. It was difficult sometimes to understand like, what the detection and response engineering was working on, the visibility
Hmm.
that you would get there, and being able to kind of give it that a spin and having a detection and response team that focuses heavily on cross-team collaboration, on working out loud, on not being as much of a black box is something that I feel really strongly about. And we are
Hmm.
somewhat picking the fruits out of focusing on those areas. So
Nice.
I don't know. I'm enjoying a lot being part of this team. And again, because of my lack of technical understanding, I heavily rely on the team to
Hmm.
to identify what are our gaps within our program on detection and response, as well as cloud security and corporate security, but mostly on detection engineering.
Hmm. And I must say that often, if you are not from, if you do not have expertise in that particular area, but from a different area, you bring in a different perspective, right? You think slightly different than folks who have been doing it for a while. So that helps in getting better at detection and response as well. And as you highlighted, like you can, of course, you need to automate, but feeding that different perspective can ease out some of these
Yeah,
activities.
yeah, absolutely. But also always starting with, hey, what I'm going to say could be totally wrong. Starting with that, I think makes it easier for my team to be able to push back and be like, no, this is how we should do it, and really let them own the program to a
Hmm.
certain extent. I am just going to be the one that is going to be helping them, like providing as much context as possible, providing different sources, trying to make them think bigger in terms of what the organization needs. But at the end of the day, from a technical standpoint, they are the ones that are going to be like identifying and executing on it. So I heavily rely on them to
Right.
be able to drive those.
Okay. Uh, so a similar question to that is, like, you have been working at Rippling and you have been running this team. Uh, what have you noticed? Like, where do organizations make mistakes, and what challenges do they face, like when implementing detection and response capabilities
That's
or programs rather?
Yeah, no, I think that that's a really good question. I'll go back to the isolation piece. Being able to
Hmm.
have a detection and response team that have impact across the organization, but not only when running incidents, but also on the project work that they do. I think that is critical. There are things that we are doing that we're working with support with several teams where they can leverage the engineering efforts that we are putting. So the detection and response team is not only focused on what are our gaps, is more
Hmm.
even focused on what are the business needs. So the work that I do can be leveraged in other places across the organization. And
Right.
we just published a couple blog posts about, hey, like this is how we build our in-house sim, and the focus
Yes.
right
Yeah.
now is on how can the rest of the organization start leveraging it. So we are somewhat democratizing it. And I think that that is really, really interesting and something that maybe hasn't been explored as much. Having the detection and response being another team that is going to be used, leveraged by others across the organization.
And like, speaking of the same system that you guys built, right? There, a lot of folks were like, "Why would somebody build a same system? There are same systems already in place." But when I went through it, I could see why and like what made you decide that, and that's a very different perspective than the industry, right?
Yeah.
So I totally respect that. uh, and you, one of the things that you really like about the tactics, right? So my next question is around tactics. Like, there are various steps and techniques that are involved when it comes to detecting any, like, suspicious activity, let's say, happening in organizations infrastructure. Can you maybe walk us through a typical incident response process, including like what steps do you take, what are some of the decision points and stuff like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, I'm just going off a Figma dashboard that one of my teammates put together that is perfect for this question. But it all
Oh,
starts with
lovely.
a security case. So anybody within the
Hmm.
organization can create a security case whenever they detect some suspicious behavior, whenever there is like something that is unusual. And that security case is going to be reviewed by the detection and response team that is going to run an investigation and determine whether that is a security incident or not. And it's after that when the investigation begins and the focus on that area once we have started a security incident is around prioritization. So, what is the severity of that security incident? And from there, we basically follow a flow chart that says, hey, these are the people that you need to add to the incident if this is a, let's say, the most critical incident. these are the steps that you need to take, like focusing on executive summary and identifying like what are going to be the what is going to be the containment part, the containment plan, and how you're going to be executing on it, as well as adding people from external comps if we need to do so. But it depends heavily on, at the end of the day, the type of incident that you're talking about.
Right. So now you highlighted multiple steps, right? Starting from opening the security case all the way to execution, communication, and all of that. Is there a possibility of using automation or any orchestration tool so that it's less painful for the security engineers, because they must be dealing with multiple security incidents, let's say on a weekly basis, right? So do you see any opportunity for automation or orchestration?
Uh, Absolutely. If you think about it, security incidents, as I was sharing with you earlier, can be very stressful, and
Hmm.
because there is a lot of people that are, not a lot of people, but depending on the severity, there could be a lot of things that are at stake. And
Hmm.
if you're an incident commander, and there is a lot of people that are asking you, hey, like, what is the summary? Or like, hey, what is the containment? What is the
Right.
plan? And on top of all the things that you're already supposed to do as an incident commander, you have to create a Google Drive folder and then create a document and copy the template from the template and then copy and paste it on the document. And then you also have to create a Slack channel, and you have to define who's the incident commander, define the steps. There are so many things that could be manual that need to be automated that
Hmm.
honestly don't have any real return of investment. So being able to automate all the process, so whoever is the incident commander, whoever is running the investigation, can focus on the things that add value.
Hmm.
So yes, automation is critical for those situations.
Okay. Uh, a a follow up question to that is, like, earlier you highlighted that once you have a security incident, or once somebody raises a security incident, you go through prioritization. Um, Now it's crucial for security professionals to manage the urgency when they are addressing the security issues, right? And at the same time, they have to make sure that they do not compromise on the accuracy as well. So, how do you balance the need between rapid response and then doing thorough investigation so that you can minimize false positives? And at the same time, like, you have 50 other things going on, right? So, how do you keep that balance between urgency, rapid response, and the accuracy?
That's a good question. One of the things that I would say is that having a rubric helps a lot. At the end of the day, like eventually you'll have a team that is worldwide, uh, like spread across different time zones, and you want to make unbiased decisions whenever a new security case is created or a security incident is
Hmm.
ongoing. You need to perform an investigation. So you want to make sure that regardless of the time zone, regardless of who's handling it, you follow the same process and you follow the same rubric on what is a step zero, what is a step one, what is a step two, and being able to tie that and make an unbiased decision on this is the criticality of this incident, and it also has its own SLA. And but
Hmm.
like even same things apply to the way you tackle your own work. So you're going to have projects, you're going to have tactical asks for operational load. The more context you have, the easier it'll be for you to identify what is the best return of investment at each given time. That associated with
Hmm.
the SLAs that you have for the incidents that you're running and having a rubric is really going to help you making good informed decisions on a day-to-day basis.
That's spot on. Like, that makes a lot of sense, that unless you have a rubric, you are sort of trying to learn while you are, let's say, addressing a security incident, which can be very difficult and stressful. Like, you're adding more stress to your day-to-day job, which is already stressful.
Yes.
um, so earlier, one of the things that you said is tooling or technology can definitely help when it comes to incident response and detection and response. So since last 1.5 years, we all have been like we have been learning and also using generative AI, right? and it has been making quite a bit of impact in our day-to-day lives. I'm curious, like, what do you see? How do you see it impact the security domain and even impact the future of detection and response?
That's a really good question. Like one of the reasons why not only it's already having an impact, but from a balancing perspective, we are building a team. The team has been growing a lot, which means that there are still like
Hmm.
we are putting a lot of emphasis on foundational things and like getting the basics right. But then on the other
Hmm.
hand, you have more risky bets, if you want to call it. If you want to use generative AI, well, it's difficult to come up with a tangible outcome. Like you
Hmm.
want the team to focus on it, to learn how to leverage it, to again like reduce operational load, for instance. But also, it's difficult to quantify what is the outcome of those bets. So
Right.
one of the things that, for instance, the Piotrek and the detection and response team is doing is he's implemented the OCSF schema on the logs that we are ingesting and leveraging
Hmm.
generative AI to be able to provide in a sample of logs, uh, basically infer what is the schema that we should adopt for any given log source. Again, this is just an example.
Nice.
Hopefully, we'll eventually post about it on how are we doing that. But it's something that is a really good example. Also, on the infrastructure team, Shreya Assis has basically been working for like 3 or 4 months on how can we leverage generative AI to create our own, let's call them like junior infrasec person that is going to be focused on getting all the information from all the different data sources, provide automated answers. Then
Hmm.
whenever somebody is posting on a Slack channel asking, hey, how can I manage secrets? So that automated
Hmm.
bot is going to automatically reply based on the information that people from Confluence to be like, hey, this is how you can do it. So again, that at the end of the day lowers operational load on the team.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, like, how do you see security teams using Gen AI? But you have already answered that, and you already have a bot in place. It looks like. So I have a slightly different question. Do you see Gen AI replacing security engineers in the future? Because you have already started, right? You have a bot which is able to answer some of the questions. So how do you see it?
That's a good question. I think so, but I think that it's part of evolving at the end of the day. Uh, think of it as being able to remove the tasks that don't add that much value, but there can also be that are repetitive to the team. Like one of the questions that I usually ask the team is like, hey, like, what are the things that you like best of your job? What are the things that you like the least at the end of the day? And really, no one
Hmm.
likes dealing with operational load. Oh, I've been seeing this alert over and over and over. I'm not adding
Hmm.
really any value. Those are the type of things that you can use generative AI or any tooling around that to be able to remove those operational tasks, to be able to given a ticket with an alert that has been enriched with all sorts of data from across your organization, use generative AI to be able to deem that as, hey, is this a false positive? Is it not? And so on, based also on previous alerts. There is a lot that can be done to remove that operational load. So I don't see that as a negative, as in, oh, people are going to be losing their jobs, but people will be focused on items that are the highest value. So from an engagement perspective, even there'll be like, hey, my time is always focused on things that really bring the best value, that make me do my best work rather than having to focus on repetitive tasks.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, it would make existing engineers more productive by eliminating some of these repetitive tasks, as you said, and also maybe guiding the engineers in the right direction or providing more context, as you said, right? Like,
Yeah.
if there is a security incident which opens up, if the bot can provide context from the entire organization, that makes the life easy for the detection engineer, right? So yeah, totally. um, so now coming to I just want to pivot slightly. You joined Rippling and you started working on incident detection and response. For any security enthusiast who wants to get into detection, incident detection and response, um, what advice would you give them?
Uh, Again, I want to preface by saying that I haven't been that long in detection and response. So I'm a bit of a newbie on that. So take what I with a grain of salt, whatever I'm going to say. But
Hmm.
I think that like somewhat similar to when I was on the cloud security, focused solely on the cloud security side of things.
Hmm.
There are a lot of things that you can do even within your home lab that have to are directly related with detection and response. Like I'll give you an example. I have a bunch of Raspberry Pis that I've been buying since the first version.
Nice.
Like being able to have
Hmm.
a home lab where you're going to be pulling the telemetry from all those systems, aggregating all the data in a security data lake that can be one of the Raspberry Pis, writing
Hmm.
detections. Like there is a lot that goes into how are you going to be ingesting those logs into your data lake? How are you going to be writing detections? Like do you have a pilot for writing those detections? All those things can be done for, at the end of the day, really cheap within your home environment that will come with a lot of lessons learned about how can you do that at a bigger scale. I usually do like give that example, but there are also, if you don't want to do it within your home lab, a lot of, at the end of the day, like free opportunities within like the clouds themselves to start playing around and building your own like log ingestion pipeline or
Hmm.
data lake. Again, like being familiar with all those tools is really critical, and focus on the
Hmm.
building side of things. That's what I would say.
So getting your hands dirty so that you get familiar with the area and you learn from it, so that you can use it in your, let's say, current or future job,
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah.
So other than that, any other key qualities or skills that could make someone successful when they, let's say, transition to detection and response teams?
Uh, on the non-technical side, I would say more of a growth mindset. The field is constantly evolving,
Hmm.
so you'll have to pivot a lot, and
Right.
you'll have to basically not, in a way, get defensive about the things that you've done in the past and how they can be done better. If we
Hmm.
were talking about generative AI, that's obviously just one example that is really hype right now. But there are a lot of
Hmm.
things that will constantly evolve, and being able to adopt that and embrace it is really going to help you be uh, on the top at the end of the day.
Okay, I really like that. Now, moving from, like, let's say, changing fields, it looks like you have an amazing team, right? With you,
Yes, I
who
do.
is who has been helping you with the overall mission of detection and response. So now, when you are hiring for the right blend of qualities and skills is very important. So what are some of the key qualities and skills that organizations should look for, like both from a technical and non-technical perspective?
It depends a lot on the organization. Like at Rippling, we use heavily AWS. So the skills
Hmm.
that I'm going to be looking for, since we want a team that is a security engineering team that is going to be engineering things, building things on AWS, you have to be an expert on, like, obviously it's impossible to be an expert on all the AWS services, nobody's, but being able to build things that are critical for detection and response and leverage those tools is a bit of a non-starter, because we are also not from a detection engineering perspective, but also from a response perspective. You're going to be
Hmm.
responding to alerts on AWS, so being familiar
Hmm.
with all those systems is critical for your to be able to handle that operational load and be good at responding at those incidents. And on the non-technical side of things, uh, Rippling is a startup. We are growing a lot, and that's really
Hmm.
exciting. But it also comes with situations where things can be messy at times, chaotic, and we embrace that because it gives us so many opportunities to get things done quickly. One
Hmm.
of the things that I like the most about Rippling is that there are no politics. I,
Nice.
given the size of the organization, it's critical that there are no politics involved, so every single person on the team can really drive whatever they feel strongly about. So that strong drive is something that we are definitely looking for. Somebody that is really, really willing to make an impact. And that also like feel really empowered on working cross team, thinking big, thinking, hey, I don't want to only focus on the detection and response gaps and what the team needs, but what the rest of the organization needs. And how can I bridge that gap? How can I learn about what other teams need across the organization, and how can detection and response help them out? So yeah.
Hmm. So getting not just being just focused on your own area, but rather thinking about the whole organization. How does security? How can security help
Yeah.
others also? Oh yeah, that's a very different approach, I would say, because most organizations, what happens is, if you are a detection engineer, you're very focused on that. But I see it very different at Rippling. And one of the things that you said is Rippling is still a startup. I don't know whether I agree to that,
Yes, it
but
is.
I understand what you mean by that.
I mean, like again, I
So,
haven't worked at that many places in the past, so it's difficult for me to tell you. Out of the 100 startups that I've worked at, this definitely feels
mhm,
like a startup. But to me, it does because of how quickly we are moving. And
mhm.
you could go on vacation for a week, you come back and you're like, oh my god, I like there's been like 3 products that we've shipped, and things are moving so quickly, and I love that.
And often, like, startups have one of those advantages, right? The speed advantage of speed.
Yeah.
So, mm, I love that Rippling is moving that fast.
Yeah.
Um so now, so that, those are the skills that you look for. Let's say you hired someone, or you are trying to hire someone. So what strategies would you recommend organizations, so that they can attract and even they can retain top security engineers in the organization?
Uh, like I think that from attracting talent, one of the things that is critical is around making sure that they have a fit. You can show them your
Hmm.
program, but at the end of the day, for them to be able to see themselves doing something at Rippling, they need to know what they are needed for. If you
Hmm.
show them your program and you're like, oh, we're pretty good. I think that we're cruising. They might not see how they're going to be leveraging the skills that they have into your program. So
Hmm.
being able to show them, hey, like this is where you fit, and this is the obviously showing them like this is the people that you'll be working with that will help
Hmm.
you find that fit, and like also find the potential impact that they have is critical. If they don't see that, it's very unlikely for them to be able to feel strongly about replaying or like wanting to join your team if they don't know exactly what are the things that you're going to be doing. And sometimes it's not on you to tell them, you're going to be focused on that. But sometimes, hey, just being able to tell them, I'm going to heavily lean on you to define your own place here, leaning on the things that you're good at. Like one of the things that
Hmm.
I ask all the people that I interview is like, what are the things that where you can hit the ground running on based on the things that I've shown you, and
Hmm.
like how can we get advantage of that knowledge? Uh, because it's not we don't do planning top down as I'm like, hey, you're going to be working on this, this, and this. I just shared with you how we try to think big, and
Hmm.
if it's just per the decision being that top down, it's too narrow. So
Yeah.
I think that having that balance is important.
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. Now, hiring is difficult, as you know, right? Hiring the right team member is difficult. It looks like you have some sort of formula. So can you share some, like, common do's or don'ts while hiring, like during the hiring process, or even evaluating a potential security engineer?
The one that I would focus on is around the mutual fit. I've been on interviews myself as a candidate where it felt one sided. I was responding question, but there was no desire to share with me what the organization is doing, where could I fit. So ensuring that there is that mutual fit and that you lay that out as in, hey, I'm going to show you as much as I can about Rippling, and I want you to show me as much as you can about yourself. So we ensure
Yeah.
that there is that overlap. Without that overlap, things are not going anywhere. And I've come across situations where I am not really learning about the company, only the 5 minutes that I have for questions. So it makes me hesitant. It's just another thing that, given the amount of uncertainty that switching jobs have, if I don't
Mhm.
really know what I'm getting into, you cannot always, depending on your situation, take that leap of faith at the end of the day.
Okay. So the tip that I see here is for hiring managers or leaders who are hiring is that be open to share about, let's say, your current situation, your goals, and see if there is a mutual fit with the candidate. And the same I would say for candidates also, right? Try to understand if there is a fit with the organization based on your knowledge, based on your aspirations as well.
Yeah.
Um, so a follow-up question to that is, uh, like if let's say you are hiring, what are some red flags or warning signs that you watch out for during the process so that you can say, hey, the candidate is not a great fit for our team?
The one that would stand out that I've seen in a few cases is one that, regardless of your experience,
Hmm.
I remember like mentioning a few questions ago that uh, you have to have a growth mindset. You cannot kind of like get defensive about the things that you've built in the past, but it also applies to there. I've had a chance to interview people that have 10, 15, 20 years of experience uh, that have been on multiple places: cloud security, detection and response, product security, and have got to a point where they think that they know it all. So that's a bit of a red flag when somebody comes across as, oh yeah, like I've been doing all these things and really I'm ready for anything. And that mindset doesn't feel like somebody that would be humble to really join a team, learn about the environment, to be able to evolve with it, to be able to be flexible depending on the situations that you face. So that's one of the red flags that I've seen that I would really encourage everybody to be like, hey, every company is different, and the practices that you had, like the security team has have also evolved. So the things that we
Hmm.
did, like that I personally did 8 years ago, were terrible. Were really bad. We should have, like, I think about it continuously as like 4 years ago I would have done things so differently. And being able
Hmm.
to realize that and identify the things that you had done wrong and be able to get them right the next time, it's something that should happen.
Hmm. And I must add that it is not just about security, right? Even with engineering or any team,
Yeah.
like if you look at what you have done a few years ago, you would be like, "What was I doing?"
Yes.
Right? But that analysis is what helps you get better,
Yeah.
so that you can correct those mistakes and get better on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, so that's a great way to end the security question section. Thanks, Pablo, for the fun conversation. Here are a few important points that I gathered. The first one is, in order to ensure success of security programs, security engineers should not work in isolation. Instead, they should collaborate across teams and throughout the organization. The second one is, for incident detection and response, organizations should have a rubric. It reduces the stress on engineers who are trying to figure out what's the right plan of action or right next steps. The third and the final one is, when it comes to hiring the security engineers, both organizations and candidates should look for mutual fit in terms of the scope of work, or in terms of the skill sets, or in terms of the future goals. Thank you. So the next section is focused on rating security practices. So the way it works is, I'll share a security practice and you need to rate them from 1 to 5, 5 being the best. And you can add context, like why you have given a particular rating. So let's start with the first one. So the first one is, develop and regularly test an incident response plan to help quickly detect, respond to, and recover from security incidents.
I'll give it a 4, just because probably if you're starting a program, that's not the first thing that you want to do. You probably want to create an incident response plan first. But I find it like we do like quarterly tabletop exercises here, and one of the
Hmm.
things that stand out from doing those exercises is trusting collaboration, because it's really fun for the product security team to work with detection and response or cloud security or CopSec and think about what scenario can I come up with that is going to make it difficult for the team that is on the blue team to respond to that. And it basically helps getting people together, which is what we want at the end of the day.
Right. I was hoping you will say five, but I understand why you said four. Uh, so the next one is granting users unrestricted access to systems and applications so that they can move fast and roll out new features quickly.
I'm going to give it a 2 on that one. Not a 1, because I think that the one below is probably worse, so I need to risk rank them. But obviously a 2, just because, again, there might be it might be needed at a given point in
Mhm.
time. And again, if you start with a 5, nobody's getting access to what they need. Probably a 10
Mhm.
people, 10-person startup is not going to grow as it should.
Mhm.
But obviously, it's just a can of worms if you do that, regardless of the size of the organization.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. The last one is DevOps practices are needed to move fast and deploy code to production. Security practices are not the most important right now.
Actually, I'm going to give it a 2 as well on this one because it feels that depending on the size of the organization, security might not be shouldn't be prioritized at a given point in time. I think that it even makes sense when there is only like a SRE team or one person on the infrastructure team. They won't be able to prioritize security practices on the DevOps practices. But
Mhm.
obviously, on the long run, that is going to bite you back at some point in time.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. That was the last question. But before I end the episode, do you have any recommendation for our audience? It can be a blog or a book or a podcast or anything.
Yeah, something that I read recommended by our CISO at Twilio was Mindset. I really like that book. I have 2 kids, so
Yes, yes.
I personally like that book from many areas, not only specific to work, but also specific to parenting, about how to grow kids or how to uh, make sure that you like identify good strategies to mentor others and for yourself even, and what it means to
Mhm.
have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So yeah,
Yeah, Mindset is an amazing book, and I agree. Like just doesn't focus on parenting; it also focuses on how you can grow as an individual,
yeah,
also, and you can help others around you. So yeah, that's a great way to end the podcast. Thank you so much, Pablo, for
yeah. Thank you.
joining. It was lovely to speak with you and learn about incident detection and response. But I really like more on the hiring part and the
Okay.
culture part. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And to our audience, thank you so much for watching. See you in the next episode.